Welcome to the Ordinary People Do Extraordinary Things podcast. I'm your host, Michael Esguerra, and on this podcast, we interview ordinary people. And by ordinary, I do mean absolutely extraordinary. I use that term very lightly, but ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And just like success, extraordinary can be defined from within. And I believe that everybody does extraordinary things in their lives. They just go unnoticed, unacknowledged, and I believe it's important to acknowledge and honor the things that we do on a daily basis. So with that said, I've got a very special guest. He's on the line with me here. He's an executive coach. He's the founder of Wise Intent. He's certified in social styles through Tracom, many years of experience in learning and development, an expert technical trainer. He's my coach. He's helped me out so much with my confidence, and he's also one of my good friends. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Don Wiseman. Don, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Michael. Man, that's quite a laundry list of things that I never expected to be said about me, but thank you very much. Thanks for having me today.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Well, that's the thing. Like sometimes we do things, every day, and we just do it, and we get so used to doing it that we don't really pause and acknowledge, like, oh, hey, here's all the things that we've done in our lives. And I don't know. I just think it's like, and it's funny because I'm hosting a room later about gratitude. Like, it's important to demonstrate gratitude for these things and to acknowledge these things, right?
Yeah, well, nonetheless, I appreciate it. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Well, I mean, that said, as I kind of mentioned in my intro, like, dude, you've helped me out so much with my confidence. And I think that's kind of like a good starting point if you're okay with it. Like, just because I don't know, like if it weren't for your support, and obviously, yeah, I mean, there were other things, going on that I worked on and stuff like that. But had it not been for your support over the last, it'll be like 3 years now, like had it not been for that support, I don't think we'd be sitting here talking on a podcast right now.
Yeah, and that's fair to say, and I know you and I have discussed it, but really at the end of the day, what I find is, with coaching and everything like that, like the catalyst was you. And the reason why I say that is you gave me the ability to ask questions, because one of the approaches that I enjoy doing is just asking questions and allowing you to have control of the conversation. Because I mean, for myself, one of the biggest challenges in life is I don't have control of my life because there's so many different external things going on. There's bills, there's work, there's kids, there's spouses. Like, we really live in a chaotic space now with technology and everything moving a mile a minute, that when we finally do sit down and we have these one-on-ones, the one thing that I struggled with is that whenever I was in a one-on-one conversation with somebody, I always felt like I still wasn't in control. And it was a bit of a violation. So when you and I connected, and you wanted to connect and you had a purpose, one of the things, of course, is confidence. And when I lose my confidence, it's because I lose control. So that was probably one of the foundational pieces is, okay, let's ask Michael questions. Let's ask him some good questions. And let's give that control back to your own destiny. Now, that's probably 3 or 4 sessions in, because I mean, the first 2 or 3 sessions, we were building rapport, we were getting to know each other, we were trying to get a sense of understanding of trust and where our head's at. And that was really huge for me, like just understanding your background, understanding my background, finding where the differences are, where the commonality is. And really, for me, I try to really effectively listen. And the reason why I say effectively is because I'm there for a purpose, and my purpose is to understand you and to adjust that communication style that makes you more comfortable. Because really, at the end of the day, for me, it is all about you, and it's all about ushering in a different perspective to, and again, I say perspective because with perspective, you get some different ideas. And as we went through for the last 3 years, there were some ideas I threw out there that you were like, no, it's not me. But that was choice again. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those foundational pieces to give you that control back to be who it is that you need to be.
Absolutely. Lots of great points in there. Something I want to touch on is just your ability to ask questions. And I say you, like, I mean, every coach, I mean, they should be like, that's kind of like a job of a coach, is to ask good questions, right? I don't know. There's something about the questions that you ask that I just appreciate so much, because we talk about perspective, right? I like to think that I have a wide perspective, but with the questions that you ask, it helps me see things that much more. And sometimes just that little bit to open my perspective that much, just it makes the world of a difference.
Well, in all honesty, too, like, I mean, the perspective that you've carried has taught me a lot. And, that's the other thing that I tried to do as a coach, is try to remove, again, the ego that I'm the one that's coaching and everything like that. And what that helped me out with is actually learning a lot from you and learning how you see things, and then questioning that, seeing that perspective, to allow us to navigate to that type of relationship where, I mean, and you and I have disagreed a number of times, but it never turns into a confrontation. I mean, it can be a conflict. And again, the difference between the two is a confrontation is when either sides are immovable and can't respect the other perspective. Well, at least that's my definition. So if anybody's watching this, my apologies. But yeah, it just turned into a really brilliant thing. And, I really hope that in the time that we've worked together, we've never made you feel uncomfortable or put you in a spot where it's like, I need to get out or anything like that. And again, that rapport piece, asking the right questions, and then getting into the good stuff. And again, the other thing that I live by, and I got this taught by a mentor of ours, I think you know who you're talking about, is Taka, but asking permissions. Now, I know he never taught us that, but when I was effectively listening to him, he would always say, can I offer you a thought? And again, control.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
I didn't get too far off track
there. No, not at all. I'm just trying to pick up which piece to carry and go off of. But yeah, no, I appreciate that as well. And that, asking permissions, I think is important, because it's about going. You don't want to go into a place where maybe they're not comfortable going. And yeah, because I mean, like, we tend to live life with intention. I mean, we can't help it, right? Like, it's kind of, I don't know, like, I think once you learn how to live life with intention, it's hard to live life without intention.
Yeah. And I think it's a strong influence to the belief systems that we've, been brought up by our parents, that we've been both influenced negative and positively by the media, and our own life experiences where that didn't feel too good or that felt all right. So, yeah. And, even with you and I working for the last 3 years, we've also seen some of our intentions kind of shift, not change, but shift to a different focus just by learning from each other.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm trying to, again, pick up some stuff that you mentioned and see where we can go with it. But like, something that you mentioned is asking questions to help me be the person that I need to be. I think there's just power in that. It's not like, and we spoke about intention, right? It's not like there's intent to go in a particular place, or like, hey, Michael should be this person or should have this quality. It's just about, like, Michael should be the person that he should be. And for me, like, I continue to, have these conversations with you, regularly, because I'm constantly striving to be that best version of myself, constantly. So what that is, like, I mean, I think I have a rough idea in my head. But at the end of the day, it is that, quote unquote, best version of myself, whatever that ideal vision is of myself.
Yeah. And, the other thing that, just comes to mind here, and I'm sure some people, if they're watching this, might think is, if I ask questions when I'm coaching, or if I'm asking questions when I'm living life, how is that going to be perceived? And I get it. Sometimes, asking questions can be viewed as a form of weakness, but when it's actually to navigate those environments or navigate those waters, or even just to get a better understanding, it's a strategic way of dealing with things. Because, and again, I've shared this with some people in some of the business etiquette programs, that when you let go of control, you're in control, because there is that strategy, that graciousness, that rapport. I mean, if we kind of reflect on our lives and when we meet new people, there's some good questions to ask there, but when you start to get to know people, have you ever noticed that people have this desire to talk about themselves? This is what I did. This is what I'm going to do. And the reason why is, again, we want to be noticed. We want to feel validated or valued. And again, not everybody, don't get me wrong, but I picked up on that, and I found that, by me showing an interest in them before they had to tell me who they were, it just built a connection that was amazing. And again, when you get the connection together, that's when you can really effectively have great conversations. It's one of the things that I do in leadership as well, is build that rapport by asking good questions, getting a better understanding of who they are, and then customizing the experience, which is the next thing that you need to do in a communication style.
Yeah. That's interesting. Like, yeah, I mean, it takes a great level of knowing that other person, especially, if you're coaching someone. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not about some sort of particular result that a coach might expect out of someone. Like, sure, we help people with accountability and help people get to where they want to go. But at the end of the day, that person decides where they want to go. That person decides, who they want to be. Like, for example, for me, just talking about me as a client, let's say, like, I do have this vision of myself, and I'm constantly striving. Like, I do have big goals and want to achieve them. So I do have this vision of myself that I'm constantly striving for, but it's nothing that is defined by anything in this external reality. Like, it's all defined from within, defined from me.
Yeah, which is awesome too, because if it's self-defined and then you find something else that's defining you even more, you have that ability to change, and nobody out front should tell you whether that change is good or bad. You know what I mean? They can give you their thoughts and their perspectives, because again, we talk about this a lot too, is what people see in you and what you see in yourself are two different things, but it's also, again, what's the intent? So, and I mean, you've navigated those waters over the last 3 years quite brilliantly. I mean, I've seen the results and I've seen the change, and it's awesome. And, I'm very proud of what you chose to do, and with that information, take it and do something with it.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. And it's so funny because you mentioned you see the change, and I would agree. I think there definitely is a change, but there's also, it's also like, when I think about some of my thoughts and like the actions that I'm taking today, like, these are also things that were also inside of me. Like, I could go back to like my journal and what I've written down from 3 years ago, 5 years ago, even like 10 years ago. And there's actually some consistency in that. But I'll link it back to confidence. Like, I didn't have the confidence to be able to do these things, right? Like hosting a podcast, for example, like 3 years ago, like it was like one on my top list of things to do was like, I should start a podcast. And I've just been saying it for like 3 years, until finally I was just like, I'm just going to start. Like, yeah, I don't know how to really do it. It's still not perfect. In fact, if you're watching this on YouTube, it's just a video of my face. You can't even see Don, but you can hear him. And that's the key thing, right? It's like, hey, I'm doing it. I'm going to learn eventually how we can have both of our faces on this video on YouTube. But for now, man, the key thing is that I'm doing it, because I could just sit and say, like, until I have this all figured out, then I'll do it. It's like, no, I'm just going to go and do it, and I'm going to learn along the way.
That's good. That's good. Because I mean, so many times in my life, and I guess this is why it's really interesting as a coach, is so when I coach and I hear the stories that you're sharing and everything like that, I can empathize with those pieces. That's when the relevant comes out, because I mean, how often have I talked about I should put up a video? Friends and family are always pushing the buttons, but when rubber hits the road, it's kind of like, I don't know. So I mean, thanks to your help, here I am today. But yeah, in coaching, it's always, even in leadership, it's always try to find the relevancy with the audience that you're working with. Is just another rapport piece that is so valuable. It's like, the minute we make somebody feel alone, I mean, what does that do?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. It's like, Michael, you're the only person on the planet that has no confidence. Well, that's not very uplifting, is it? So, yeah, when we talk about the focus of coaching and everything like that, or even, I wouldn't even say coaching, it's like connecting with anybody. and you want to build that rapport. It's about appreciating the relevance. So even the empathy side of things, it's good. But yeah, that whole thing of it being in you, I believe you. It's just a matter of, do we do, a paralysis by analysis is what I like to say, where we overthink things, and that overthinking can sometimes be accused of procrastination, but it's just that fear of the unknown, right?
Yeah.
And I think with you and I working together, that dark corner of that room that you had fear of, we just shined a flashlight in there, and you were like, oh, okay, it's just a corner.
Absolutely. And then the more light that was shone on it, the brighter it became, and the less dark it became.
Yeah. And there's actually a really interesting concept that I read. I can't even remember who I got it from, but you look at a room that has a single light and dark. There's gray spaces in there. And, when we're talking about life, they're always saying try to find the gray spaces, because as you walk into the gray space, that's when more light shines, and that darker part becomes a gray space. And you just keep on reaching out, and keep on going, and keep on going. I thought it was a pretty neat concept.
Cool. Yeah, makes sense too. Taking a slight turn-ish in the conversation, but I'm curious, what made you decide to become a coach?
Yeah, that was quite a legacy. There's a number of things that I think fell in line. As a kid, and as a young leader, I was what we would deem as an expressive type. It's basically shoot first, ask questions later, except I was shooting with my mouth. I would say things and then, live in a world of regret because I knew I'd probably put out hurt. There was ego there, absolutely, overconfidence, or there was just too much confidence that I didn't take an appreciation for my audience. How about that? My intention was never to hurt anybody. But, ascend the corporate ladder, yada, yada, yada. And I was chasing the big leaders' jobs. I wanted to be an executive. I wanted to work in the high rises, There was a turn in my road, or a turn in my relationship where, got divorced, got remarried, and this next person in my life really lit up the understanding of purpose of what a relationship was to me. And I've held on to that dearly. And actually, next week will be our 18th anniversary of marriage. So that's pretty exciting. Yeah.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. But so I think, honestly, she's the catalyst for the transformation. It was just knowing that I wanted to be good. I just didn't know how to be good, if that makes any sense. It does in my head. So anyways, transition of jobs, anything. And I go back to this telecommunication company that I originally started my career with. And I came back in thinking I hadn't lost status, that I was still the same guy, but everything around me had changed. And because it changed, all of a sudden, I went into an identity crisis. What do I need to be to get back to that status? And man, I had even got to the point where I was like 5 minutes away from losing my job. And, the one thing that I have to say about this company is there was amazing experience and there was amazing leaders. And I actually got paired up with a leader that actually seen what I was trying to do and then started coaching me on how to get there just by asking good questions. It's just, like I would make a statement in a one-on-one, and they would say, well, if you made that statement in a room with all these leaders, how do you think that would be received? Like, really good question. So, of course, I got thinking. And just in that little bit of time working with them, all of a sudden, I started to elevate my inner good wannabe self instead of the person I thought I needed to be for the corporation came out. And man, life got easy. And without any intention, I excelled to the top in my role as a HR technical trainer. And it got to a point where Shaw approached me and they said they wanted to move me. Well, I dropped the company name, sorry. But they wanted to move me into a leadership role. And I was a little bit jaded and stained based on my interactions with the leadership at the time because, past experiences and everything. And they're really, honestly, at that time, if I'd have known what I know now, I'd have probably been fine because one of the definitions I live in now is everybody's doing the best job they can with what they got, what they know, and the environment they're surrounded by. And man, that has just liberated me so many times out of frustration. But anyways, I didn't know if I wanted to be in leadership. So they said, start sitting with some leaders. So I sat with some leaders, they got to sit with a director, got to sit with an amazing leader from operational excellence, and learned a lot of them. But they were also really gracious in the fact I could ask a lot of questions. And by asking questions, then I asked permissions for a different insight. And they received it, and they gave me that feedback. You know what? That's good. And that's kind of when it kind of clicked in is, do I want to be a leader or do I want to help leaders? Mm. And I think that was somewhat of an intuition. And of course, our mentor that we were working with at the time, Taka, I mentioned that to him, and that's when the opportunity of coaching came along. So I've done some online programs with coaching and, Tracom consulting. We did the coaching program with them, and I got really excited about that. And it all stems down from being a trainer in one of the programs. And one of the programs was actually supposed to be teaching technicians that are going into the field how to be more personable with customers to sell more. Mm-hmm. And when I first looked at the program, I thought, oh, this isn't going to fly. And then all of a sudden studied it and kind of realized there was pieces of me in it. And this one day I did this program, and I must have been just firing on all cylinders, luckily. And after the program was done, one of the technicians that was kind of a leader, kind of gruff and getting done, he pulled me aside, and I can just remember it. His eyes looked like they were welling up, like he was just hit with such emotion. And he said, "I think you have just saved my marriage." I'm like, "What?" He said, "I didn't hear about being a technician and doing this stuff. I heard about being a human being." Wow. And that hit me to a point of I started to believe that my purpose was to offer a perspective to give people a choice to make a difference in their life. And that was my introductory to a version of the social style that I've been certified in Tracom, and that's just behavioral styles, which has been a huge benefit in my interactions with people.
Wow. That is, man, that's a powerful story. I want to talk about social styles in a bit, but man, what a powerful story! Like life-changing. Like you're there to teach people about technical training, right? How to fix equipment in people's homes, but here you are changing people's perspective, helping people with their personal lives.
Yeah, I didn't expect it either. I mean, I knew it was a soft skill module, but it was to generate more sales. But I didn't expect somebody that showed that persona to come to me to share something that personal. And I was, again, I thanked him for having the ability to think differently. Mm-hmm. And that's really the catalyst is people were willing.
So curious, what was like your next step or your next thought after that experience to get you to where you are today?
Well, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. I did get offered a number of roles. I should say a number of roles. I did get offered a role, and I skipped that because it was a process task-oriented role. And then there was an idea of entertaining, putting my name in the hat for some leadership roles. But then the company itself was going through a transition. Coincidentally, it was really weird because we had incorporated Wise Intent in December of 2017. And then in January 2018, the company I was working for announced that they were offering a voluntary departure program. So it was kind of weird. And, the company was quite generous in the packaging. So I decided to take the packaging. And in March of 2018, I was freelance. Mm-hmm. So that was sort of the stars were interesting aligned in just kind of seeking out this journey. But as time went on, one thing I realized is being an owner of a company and being a product of a company are two different things. So there's been a lot of growth and development. And in the years since then, I've done tons of studying, and I actually went back to a company as a facilitator and then became a leader there. And as much as I thought I was never going to get into leadership again, I accepted the role. And one of the reasons why I accepted the role is I needed to prove to myself that all of these concepts that I believed in as a leader in being a leadership coach and everything like that, I had to put the rubber to the road. And fortunately, those concepts worked. So all of the podcasts that I've listened to or watched in the books, my father's been a big influence on my life, and the same with my mom, of what a leader is. They're both just natural leaders in their own space. It really worked. And it was about being the most genuine human being with the responsibility of creating a vision that allowed me to be an effective leader. And I mean, it was an amazing time. It just, unfortunately, with the pandemic and all of the changes and everything like that, that in itself, that company couldn't sustain, and we had to close the doors back in mid-February. So, but yeah, some really interesting experiences.
Very interesting. It was almost like the universe was just kind of like nudging you in the direction, like encouraging you to go there.
Yeah, I think what it was is, in the terms you would use, the universe had it sitting there, and it gave me a choice to take it. So, I think I'm probably most guilty, but sometimes I just don't see the opportunities that are sitting there, and I don't take it. But this time around, I was aware. I took it as a learning experience, because, one of the biggest things that I say, and a lot of people say, is the only way you're truly as a leader is if you're continuing to grow. You've always got to keep on learning.
Absolutely.
So I took it as a learning experience.
Absolutely. Something that's kind of come up quite frequently was this, just the concept of choice. And, I'm curious to know, like, what would you say is either your biggest lesson learned or the biggest lesson that you teach around choice?
Honestly, like I said at the beginning, I believe that when we offer choice, we offer control. And control is so empowering. I mean, you think about it in conflict situations or even confrontations, people want to be in control of it, because when we're out of control, that's just not a good feeling, that vulnerability, and even though, like, a lot of times in this day and age, they say it's okay to be vulnerable, but the statement kind of ties in with a choice. It's okay to choose to be vulnerable. And, even in this environment, in this workplace we're in, we need to allow more and more choice. Just because, like I say, there's not a lot out there. And when a person go into a work environment, and, instead of just having a choice of whether to work there or not, there's other choices. One of the things that in my last place when I was leading, we were an instruction company, and we tell our instructors, your students are individuals, and as individuals, they have different learning styles. You need to choose what learning style you need to deliver. And they're like, wait a minute, I just don't script it out. It's like, no, it's not authentic. And we would sit in and we'd watch them instruct and everything like that. And some of the stuff I would learn from these instructors were just amazing. Like, I mean, I would talk to them afterwards, and I'm like, yeah, it's okay if I put that in my back pocket, just so if I'm in a class, take care of that. But yeah, I guess now what I'm trying to say, and I kind of just had me picking myself, that when we give control, we have an opportunity to learn something new as well.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a good one. Like your Sunday conversations now, eh?
Exactly. That's awesome.
And I'm really hoping, honestly, that if people are listening to this, they actually, if they have any thoughts or any comments, I would love to see what that is, and maybe I can learn something else. I'd appreciate that.
Absolutely. So I guess, for those watching this either live or on the replay on YouTube, you can drop it in the comments or join the Facebook group, and you can leave comments in the Facebook group as well. I think those would probably be the best place to add them. Yeah. Or I guess DM us, but I mean, if this blows up, then then I don't know if we'll be able to manage it in our DMs. But
I'm kind of curious, because again, you talk about ordinary people being extraordinary, and I totally agree with you. And I think, the significance of an individual is how they hear things, how they approach life. To me, how is a big thing. Why is important, what they do is important, but how is one of those little sleepers that I'm so interested in. So how people are receiving this information and everything, whether it's good or whether it's constructive, I mean, be as it may be. I mean, if it's constructive and, it hits me in an interesting way, then I'm going to be able to have a choice to learn from it. So.
Absolutely. That's interesting. Let's go there since you kind of touched on it. Because you're right. I hear a lot about the what. Hey, what is it that you do? You hear about the why. Like, why do you do those things? But like you said, it's kind of a sleeper. Like, we don't really often talk about the how. So can you elaborate more on that?
Well, yeah, it's kind of funny because, a manager of mine, Dave T. I shouldn't probably put full names in here so nobody hunts them down. No, but anyways, I always thought he was an interesting leader, and I got to see him in a number of different roles, and then I got a really amazing opportunity to work with him on one-on-one. And man, I should have given that guy more credit than I did at the time. But one day, I was a facilitator. Well, actually, I was an instructor. I didn't really know how to facilitate. He said, "Don, how do you instruct?" And I went through the regiment of my day. Oh, I do this, I do that. He goes, "No, Donnie, how?" And I didn't understand. And as time went on, my how is different than how other people do it. My how is like, as a facilitator, as an instructor, I get really excited by building relationships. I also like asking questions because I want to give my audience control. I do that with the clients I work with coaching. I do that with the people that I've led in the past. I think that makes me significantly different. Other people have pointed out that I have the ability to see a high world level and put all the pieces together. I don't know. But everybody has these unique gifts, and what I try to do is I try to pay attention when people tell me what it is that I do, and I dominate on that. And not dominate people, but I focus on that instead of focusing on the stuff that are really crappy. When it comes to analytics and attention to detail, I'm done. I'm absolutely done. So that's the other reason why I build rapport, because I find people that love analytics and they're detail oriented. I just had some paperwork that was being done, guy. I gave it to him because I know how structured and detail oriented he is, and he's good at that space, and I hope he enjoys that space. And it's know where your strengths are. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you have things that you have to work on, of course you got to work on them, but just really remember where you're strong at and find somebody else to complement those things that you just don't have the time or can't get to.
Yeah, that's a common piece of advice that I hear. I try to challenge it because I'm like, no, I'm going to turn my weaknesses into strengths. And, I kind of go against the grain there, but that could also be why things aren't necessarily scaling up as I envisioned them to, right?
Well, here's a perspective. And, I'm going to bring my wife into the picture. My wife, she's very detailed oriented. She's very analytical. And I mean, we've all been in this space, so I don't want to alienate her. But there was a time where she was working and she was so frustrated. And I'm like, what's wrong? Well, I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. And I'm like, isn't there people in your work environment that do that? Yeah, but they don't do it. They don't do it right. They don't do it the way I like it. So if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself. How often have we heard that? So it's not a bad thing. I had my thinking cap on, and I wanted to support her, but I wanted to support her in a different way, and I wanted to help her see a different perspective. So I said, so you're losing all this time because you're doing somebody else's job? Yeah. Okay. How's that person ever supposed to get better at their job? Well, what do you mean? I said, if you're always doing their job, they have no opportunity to ever get better at it. And if anything, what we're doing now is we're rewarding them for the performance they're not living into. If somebody isn't doing it the way you want it, or the way it should be done, where's the communication in that? And it's not only communication. First, it's the communication. Second, it's the supportive role in helping them get there. I mean, for all we know, I can say, Michael, go do your job. You're like, I don't know how to do my job. Or this is how I know how I'm doing my job. I guess another example is at the telecommunication company I was at, there was about 150 technicians that were working in the field, and all the other departments were upset because they weren't doing it the way it was meant to be done. So in collaboration with a couple other gentlemen, we came up with an idea that was called Texpo. And one day every year, we'd have all the other departments, and forgive my terminology, they would bring to a booth in this big area everything that pissed them off about these technicians. In an educated fashion, obviously. So if it was a process they were following, put the process on the board and explain to them why the process needs to be this way. The technicians would come out and go, I had no idea that's why we were doing it. I thought it was just somebody else asking something else. So getting back to it, the reason why I don't work too hard on my weaknesses is because I've tried. I've absolutely tried. With the situation with my wife, she wasn't allowed somebody to have a weakness that would turn into a strength. So again, there is that thing of collaboration, pulling other resources in and everything like that. And when you start understanding behaviors and social styles and personalities and building that rapport, you start to find out what they like to do. And they may not be good at it, but when you push them into it, they'll get better at it much more quickly than those that don't like to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's it. That's a great segue, by the way. Tell us more. Tell us more about social styles and why one would benefit from knowing what their social style is.
Well, honestly, I'm infatuated with social styles. And I think the reason why is the self-identification. That story I told you about that gentleman, and he said his marriage could be restored. I had a huge eye-opener. When I did the questionnaire and the profile of this side of social styles, I seen all of the personality traits that really sat with me. But what was really neat is I dug in deeper, and for each of the personality traits, I started to identify the benefits of it when I did it well, and the negative effects of it when I wasn't in top form. So what it did is it gave me a high sense of awareness of how I needed to perform to be at my best to benefit others. So as an expressive, which I fall into a high range, I need validation. I need feedback. All of those kind of pieces. And what's really funny is when you observe somebody from a distance and you see this behavior, a lot of times you can give accusational statements that have a negative context, right? He's egotistical, needy, this, that, the other thing. What happened when I was learning the social style piece, it realized that is a behavior that maybe is used probably in the less productive way possible. So for myself, being I'm an expressive and I like being the center of attention, I decided to move myself into a role as a facilitator, as a coach. So now I'm in an audience where I am the center of attention. So I get what I want. Now I can focus on the other things that need to be delivered. Mm-hmm. And that was the starting of it all, understanding myself. Because I really do believe that anybody that's a leader of people or is a coach or anything like that, it's really tough to support and lead others until you understand yourself. And again, I'm still working on it. I'll never stop. But once I got there, then I started paying attention to the other behavioral styles. I started understanding the nonverbal communication and the verbal communications that were tied into that. And then when I could help identify, then I would ask some good questions to validate if I was on the right path. There is a driver personality. It's results oriented, to the point, almost like bullet form would be the best way to describe it for me. When I dealt with those people, instead of me talking for a long period of time like I am right now, so if there's any drivers out there, I'm really sorry, but when I was directing a driver right away, I would just get to the point. We need to get this done. This is what I like to see. Boom, 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 boom. And they'd be like, perfect. Can I go now? Yeah. The challenge is, even though they're in Tracom, there's 4 styles, there's also an introvert and an extrovert version of it all. And, I guess for me, it's a little bit easier because I've actually immersed myself deeply in it all. Whereas for anybody outside looking in, I can understand how it can be interesting. And, I find these ways when I'm learning this stuff to try to make complicated simple, just, like bullet form, driver, people are like probably right away. Analytical, facts, amiable. Just think of a hug, harmony, bunch of people together working together. And the expressive, look at me. That's how I define it, but there is a lot more to it. And again, there is no good or bad behavior style when utilized properly.
Gotcha. And apologies. What were the? You said there were 4 styles. What were the 4 styles again?
Well, in the Tracom area, and again, don't get me wrong, there's a Myers-Briggs, there's DISC, there's colors, there's even 16 personalities that's online. And I don't have anything to do with them, but I love that one because they give you a lot of great story and a lot of beat. So in the Tracom world, there's a driver, expressive, amiable, and analytical.
Gotcha. And I guess in an elevator speech, how would you explain all four of them?
Well, the driver, get to the point, right? Get her done. The expressive is really, notice me, amiable, let's all do it together, and analytical, just need the facts.
Okay, cool. And what is,
go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to ask, like, what is your social style, and how do you interact with people because of your social style?
Well, my social style actually hovers between the expressive and the amiable. And oddly enough, what we find is when people start creating self-awareness of themselves, they start actually, if you were to look at a square and put one in each corner of that square, you'll find that people that focus more and more will see characteristics of all sides. So, like, I do have, get to the point, let's get her done. You've seen that. I like using facts to understand how to navigate environments. But when I'm at my weakest or I'm actually struggling, I'll go to an expressive state. Feeling sorry for myself, even in an anger state, I'll be quite expressive, those kind of pieces. So I find that the social style piece, those, you can be all four, but when you've got your guard down and your situational awareness is out the door, that's usually the interesting piece. And some people favor some of these areas. And so expressive amiable is usually where I hover, but depending on the circumstance and situation. So that does get it a little bit more complicated, but what can make it simple is just offer an understanding of self. We do not hang our hats on the behavioral styles. There's a lot more to it. I've explained it before. There's a difference between personality and behavior. If you were to look at a pie, like a cherry pie, right? I would say the crust is the behavior and the filling is the personality. You get to see the crust, and people get to experience that crust, but you really don't know what's inside it until you cut it open.
That's a good analogy. Well, we're almost at the end of the hour here, so I want to be conscious of time. But I've got a couple more questions, if you're okay with it.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Asking permission, right? So earlier you mentioned that your mother and your father are great leaders, like natural leaders. What is your biggest takeaway from them in terms, either one of them, in terms of like leadership? What was your greatest lesson from them?
Oh, I don't know if there's a greater lesson, because as I live life, as I talk with people, I can hear my father's voice run through my head of just great quotes that have just resonated with me. So he was definitely a man of wisdom, and it's kind of funny with her last name that I would say that as again. But my mom was a leader of love, I would say. Like she had a very interesting life, and the amount of positivity that she radiates after everything that she's been through, she is an absolute soldier. Just amazing. But yeah, my parents have been amazing educators of my life. They have done stuff that even to this day I don't approve of. They've done some amazing stuff that just blows my mind. But I go back to that thing that I shared earlier about leaders, and this is what I do with my parents. They were doing the best they could with what they got and what they know. They're people. They have emotions. They have challenges. They have their own lives. I was, and as a younger person, I didn't get that. But I get that now, and I'm hoping that everybody that in my world gets that too, because that makes my life easier. But yeah, lots of lessons. Just, I think very highly of both of them.
Cool. I'm curious. So you said your mother was a leader of love. How would you describe your father? What type of leader was he?
He was an all-around sturdy, strong leader. My father has such an amazing mind to see things that I don't see. His ingenuity, his drive, really, really there. He is ahead of his time. Well, even in his work heyday, some of the stuff that he'd come up with, he was there. And he tried to be a good man. He absolutely did, and he did a great job. He did the best he could with what he got.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And who knows, maybe I'm wearing rose-colored glasses and seeing my parents in the best light possible, but what's the harm in that?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. Like I know that I do that as well. I think it's almost like a natural thing as a child, right? You kind of like look at your parents in that way, right?
I hope so. But I mean, I did have a struggle at one time. I mean, with my age and being out on my own at such a young age and everything like that, there was a lot of animosity, and it just took me time to struggle through that. But when you choose to see, I relive the experiences with my family, and I choose to see a lot of the good. I remember some of the tough times, but I've learned from that and tried to influence that in being a father.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't always work, but I try.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, I can definitely see a mixture of your mother and your father in your leadership style, because you come with your mind, but you also come with your heart.
Well, thank them then.
Well, thank you. Thank you to your parents.
Right
on. Cool. Well, last question then, and it's a question that I ask all of the special guests here. But if you had access to a billboard, and you could put it anywhere in the world, where would you put it, and what message would you have on it?
Where did that come from? That's a interesting question.
It's actually from another podcast host, Tim Ferriss, who I really look up to, but it's one of the questions that he asks his guests as well.
What would I put on a billboard that I could put anywhere?
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I think I'd put it on the moon.
Okay.
And it would probably say something like, how was I going to put it? How would it be? I mean, it's quote from somebody else. But I mean, the thing is, today is, today's problems are tomorrow's solutions. But I guess the thing is one thing that always resonates with me, and I try to remind myself, is the biggest problem I have in my life today won't be as big as the problem I'm going to have tomorrow. And I mean, going through being out on my own at such a young age, going through a separation, being unemployed, almost losing my younger son, those were the biggest problems in their time. But yet here I am right now, and the problem in my head right now is nothing compared to what those problems were, but it's still the biggest problem that's going on. So that's why I always like waking up early, because I'm always looking forward to tomorrow. So I don't know how you put that in one liner, but the reason why I put it on the moon, it would only show up on the full moon, so at least once a month that everybody got reminded about it instead of constantly bludgeoned by the same statement.
Interesting.
Because I've been a trainer, I've been an instructor, and one of the biggest frustrations that I've personally experienced, and I learned this from a gentleman by the name of Colin that I work with at Shaw, is a lot of times training is treated like an event. We jump in, we train, we get all excited, we pump up, and then we walk out the door, and something gets in the way, and the training is meaningless.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't say meaningless, sorry trainers out there, but I mean a lot of the training gets lost because it doesn't get reminded, it doesn't get result checked and orientated. So I don't know, if just right now, and again, this hasn't been a dream of mine because this question foot swept me, but I thought, yeah, put it on the moon. And then, once a month it comes around and reminds everybody, like, oh, that's right, I got to do that. And again, people can live their lives and then get gently reminded and keep on going. Does that work?
Yeah. Hey, there is no right or wrong answer. It's whatever answer came to your mind and to your heart.
Maybe what we would do is have that billboard say, remember your problem from last month? Is it still your problem? Did things get better? Maybe that would be, I don't know. But yeah, I've always been a worrier. So it's one of those things that I constantly try to stop myself worrying on it, knowing things will get better.
No, that's that makes a lot of sense. And just touching on what you said there around like with training, like I understand what you're saying there. I mean, oftentimes it's treated as a one-time event, right? And then if you don't use it, you lose it. And so if we're not constantly coming back to it, so I appreciate your message around, it coming back, like once or twice a month, just as a reminder, like, hey, don't forget. Right?
Yeah, well, a lot of your most trustable people are your consistent ones.
Absolutely.
So, awesome. Well, sorry, I didn't think I had a lot to say, but good job in bringing it out.
Hey, all I did was ask questions. You're the catalyst. You're the one that did it all.
Well done.
I think that's a great way to tie this up into a bow here. But Don, I appreciate you making time today and being open to this conversation, this live conversation. And again, and thank you so much. If I haven't already, which I know that I do, hopefully I do more often than not. But thank you so much for your support, for your guidance, and just for helping me become the person that I envision myself to be.
Oh, it's been a great ride. And you know what? Thank you for today. I didn't know what to expect, but I enjoyed it. It was nice to be able to talk. But yes, and thank you for everyone listening. If you do make a comment, would appreciate it.
Yeah.
Helps out, helps us grow. And Michael, you're doing one heck of a job, so you need to be proud of yourself.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. So as Don mentioned, leave a comment. You can leave a comment on this video here. Leave a comment in the Facebook group. Connect with Don. You can catch him on Facebook, on Instagram, at @wise_intent. I'll get his links and I'll put it in the bio here. But yeah, you can connect with us. He's also in the Facebook group as well, so you can connect with him in there as well. And those links will be in the bio. Other than that, actually, I'll throw to you, Don, before I go for the official close. Any closing words for us before we leave?
No, honestly, hopefully you're listening to this and you were able to, I guess, if you had any beliefs that contradicted it, you kind of question it, just that this is a different perspective. My intent isn't to hurt or harm, it's just to offer another perspective. So if you've done that, thank you very much. And Michael, thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Awesome. Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate you being here. So that's it for today. Remember, if you can learn anything, you can do anything. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care. Peace.